but people, they kept them nice and clean. They used to whiten their steps and blacklead their grates. Yeah, that was a bit of a drag that Mother didn't care for much. But you had to do it because the grate soon got tired. You know, cast iron, and you had like a curved brush and blacklead, and you know, you brush it all on, and then rather like doing your boots really, because you put the blacklead on, and then you with another brush you'd go over it and it'd start to shine and then of course when you lit the fire and get it all going, it wasn't long before you needed doing again, you know, and because there's always piles of ashes to get rid of, and and the other side was dustbins. We had I'm not sure, I think we each had our own dustbin. They were in a little compartment behind the toilets. The 4 toilets were sort of diagonal to the yard. It was like a little, and this was round the corner from the wash house, so we weren't too far away. And but you always used the same one, which you shared. I think ours was shared with the 2 ladies that had priority on wash day. I can remember their names, but I probably oughtn't to mention them because probably they've got relatives still in others and they might not want me, you know.
No, that's fine.
Yeah.
Do you remember the toilets?
Sorry?
Do you remember the toilets? Were they flushing toilets, or was it just
they had a big cast iron tank, which was the standard things for toilets those days, even inside the houses, some with a chain. Yeah, and yeah, that all worked quite well. But the problem was, you know, sharing toilets with families. You can imagine all the slight difficulties there. You know, you'd come out and there'd be somebody in there, and you know. And
did you take your own toilet paper with you?
Yeah, it worked, and because you wouldn't use any of the others. I think they were all locked actually, and we had our own key. Yeah, I'm pretty certain of that.
But it was quite scary for you.
Yeah, well, the idea being that if we knew who was using them, you knew that if they wasn't kept clean, somebody with a key was responsible. So it's a good thing, that.
I bet you. What did your mother think of having to go outside to the toilet, having your own toilet in?
You can imagine she didn't like that at all, and it wasn't very convenient when it was snowing and blowing a gale or whatever, you know. No, they were hard times really, but you can imagine that families in Atherstone that lived in those and thought of it as part of their normal life. Because my mother, her main complaint was that this is a backward place. She said, I'm being cast back into, you know, yeah. And I mean, she was one of a big family. Where we lived in Essex, we had relations all over London. And I remember as a kid travelling into Liverpool Street. That was our main line stations, because we were on the line that ran from Liverpool Street to Southend. Now local station was Chadwell, which was we're fairly near to Romford and Ilford, and I remember all the stations, the Good Mays, Seven Kings, and all that lot, and into London and visiting all those, and the old trams that used to go up the cobbled roads, you know, and all that stuff. I know I'm getting away from the original story, but just to put you in a picture of what I remember of those days, really. But Atherstone, it was a sort of bit of a town of contrast. There was some very nice houses, and people in business had good places. I remember when I lived in the marketplace, Chapel House and and St Mary's, they were occupied by people, and not like they are today, you know, being businesses. But yeah, the town was sort of strange to me, being a stranger. But I suppose if I'd have been born here, I wouldn't have thought anything of it, you know. Yeah.
Were the people welcoming when you came? Were the people welcoming to you?
Somewhere,
when you moved in?
Well, the more friendly people towards us than otherwise, but this is a sample of any community, really.
Exactly, yeah.
Strangers, even today we kind of resent the big influx of immigrants, don't we, to an extent, you know, and in the same way, the fact that we talk different, and I remember going to school, I used to get in fights with boys, you know, because they sort of ganged up on me, the sort of thing you get today. But that was all part of life there, and I didn't expect it to be any different. But Allen's Row, it was a place that, as a kid, it wasn't so bad, but to a mother that had just come from had all the modern facilities, it was a bit of a letdown to her. But when we got the light on, and she could just use a switch on the wall, and that was a lot easier for her, you know. And because she was, when I was called up for the army, she was there on her own. And the neighbours, mum, they go on quite well, really. So in that side of it. And we wasn't far from the shops. Well, she used to do the ones we felt for downstairs, and wool mainly, if she could get wool to make a softer one for the bedrooms. And that was about it, really. We had lino on the floors on the wooden floors upstairs, and the double burner lamps didn't give much light. That was the trouble, but enough for a bedroom, I suppose. But and then candles, which nowadays always seem a bit dangerous, don't they, when you think of having candles in their candlesticks. But people were careful with those sort of things, and very rare. Can't remember any house fires, so everybody must have been careful. The fire itself had an oven to it, but it was never very effective. But Mum used to use the gas cooker for doing the Sunday roast or things like that. We adapted reasonably well. The problem was just having the one sink with a tap over it. It meant that you couldn't really hot any quantity of water. You could put a kettle, say, over the fire, and then the rest of it you'd have to use saucepans on the old gas rings. Yeah.
Did you lock your door? Did you have your own key?
Yeah,
they say people
the
left
doors were used to use the old-fashioned box locks, which were quite big, and the key was a massive thing, really. But that was standard door lock in those days. And then later they graduated to what they called a rim lock, which was a smaller version of that. But our original door lock was one of these large keyed box locks, and because that's something Mum had to carry around with her. Yeah.
Did you have your own key?
I don't think I did when I was a kid, no, because we didn't lock the doors quite so frequently as we do today. People, there was a bit of thieving went on, but usually in yards there wasn't very much of that, very rare anybody would take anything, even if you went out and left it. I think mainly because we hadn't got anything really worth pinching.
Absolutely,
yeah. That was quite an experience, really, and although I'd forgotten most of it, it sort of revitalised it a bit. Reading in there about, I thought, well, Ellen's Row was one old yard. I wonder if there's anybody interested in somebody that remembers living in it.
Yeah, of course we are. Yeah, it's fascinating.
Yeah, it was an experience which was more unique to me, being a stranger to the area, and some of the things I'd never seen before. As I say, dollies was one of them. I looked at these things in the tub when we first got there and couldn't figure out what they did with those. Yeah, the ladies must have been pretty tough in those days, because they didn't complain about anything, and they just got on with it, and it seemed that hard work was the standard for everybody, really. And during the war, people just got on and never moaned about anything. And of course, we had the war caught up with the Midlands and the terrible bombing of Coventry, and we had local bombing. I can't remember any bombs in Atherstone, but Grendon, they had bombing there, and also where Joan came from, Kingsbury. There were several houses in Kingsbury bombed, and quite near to where Joan lived, and so really the war, the Midlands wasn't the best, safest place to really be, because Coventry, I remember cycling to Coventry with a mate of mine, and after that raid, and I couldn't believe it, Coventry was virtually flattened, and it was a terrible disaster, worse than I'd actually seen down in London. We used to have some, I remember once during a daylight raid of the Germans, Mum was in the shelter, and I heard this plane going over low, so I came out the shelter, and it was a German plane. I remember seeing the iron crosses on the plane, and shells bursting all round it from the anti-aircraft guns, just like you see it in the war movies. Only this was for real. And Mum put her arm out and dragged me in. She said, "You'll get hit by shrapnel," she said. Because we used to get plenty of that flying about. It used to come through the windows, and until you get hit by it, could be fatal. And so it was a bit dodgy, but as a kid, I get out there and see it, because the raids, some of them were pretty awful. There was areas where there was all streets flattened with some of these huge bombs that the Germans were using. And then out at Spitfires we had the Hornchurch Aerodrome, which wasn't too far away, and we was always seeing Spitfires, and being lads, that was an interesting thing, And of course the Midlands was a great place for planes, because Coventry at Baggington, where the Lancasters and all that lot were made, it was and I remember too cycling with a mate of mine when we lived in Ellen's Row to Higham on the hill there, when what is the Myra now was the actual RAF airfield. And they trained pilots there to fly the Wellingtons, the Wimpy as it was known. And I remember we used to park our bikes up on the bridge, the railway bridge, because the railway line was all in there, and watch the planes, the old Wellingtons landing, coming on what they call circuits and bumps, and the trainee pilots, and some hazardous landings sometimes, but it was all part of the fun.